show on a Friday. We're talking 49er football. We've got Ryan Hensley with Ryan, good to see you, man. How's things going?
Going fantastic. Glad to be here with you, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's the dead time of year, but it's the combine as well. How much do you get into the combine?
A little bit. It depends. I think normally for me, if the 49ers have a high draft pick, like first round, I'd probably be into it a little bit more. Not as much now because we're a third round entry at 99. But I do like watching the highlights, but not too much. Not this year.
Did you see Lynch's dialogue earlier from I guess Tuesday? Did you see what he had to say about the quarterbacks? What'd you think?
I did. Interesting. Definitely a lot of ways you can take that conversation. I think I see it a little differently from a lot of people. Well, maybe not a lot of people, but I think I see things differently from some people. I think a lot of people took that conversation as an invitation that they're going to be trading Trey Lance. I think I see it completely different. And I can tell you why if you want to hear it. I think for me, if we look back, when the 49ers were trading Jimmy Garoppolo, what did they do? They built him up. They told everybody that would listen how great of a quarterback he is. I feel like if they were going to be trading Trey Lance, that's what we would have been hearing from John Lynch. And we didn't hear that. I think it's more of a motivational thing for Trey Lance. You're not entitled, Trey Lance, type of thing. And so I don't necessarily think that they're going to trade him. Actually, I disagree that they're going to trade him.
Who knows what they're going to do? I just took it as it was just such a wasted opportunity to not build up your guy and be like, hey, you know what? It's a bad break for Brock, and it's a bad break for us, and we don't know his status, but we do know that we really love Trey, and he's going to obviously start, taking all the reps with the ones, and there was all kinds of things, avenues he could have said, he seemed very measured in what he said. It was just very odd. And then he's got to play. That's the biggest challenge because we have a team that's ready to go. I don't know. That to me, that seems like you're saying, well, he's got to play, and that's the challenge because we got a team that's ready to go. Trey just went to the combine or went to the Super Bowl and talked to Rich Eisen and was totally humble and was like, hey man, I don't want anything handed to me. I just want to, what Brock did was great. And I just want a chance to compete. Literally that's all he said. So I don't know that they needed to knock him down at all. If anything, it seems like, dude, why wouldn't you build him up a little bit more? It almost was like, John was talking to a rival GM. It's like, I think people who think that Trey doesn't have value, I think are wrong. I think Trey has a ton of value because I think now the NFL knows because there's NFL people that have gone to different places that know him. But this kid's the real deal. You know what I mean? That this kid's, this is what he's about, football and being a great quarterback. And he's a great prospect. I think his value is greater than it was when he came into the league, despite the fact it hasn't happened for him on the field for a bunch of reasons that we could talk about for hours. But I just read that as he's got to play. That's the biggest challenge. At least the implication's got to be clear there that if that's the challenge, that means that he's not going to play in John's mind, and that he's clearly behind Brock and Brock's ready to play. Which is Trey fine with that? Are you fine with that? To have Trey sitting again for another year? Is that? I think everybody who's a Trey fan should be in favor of Trey playing.
Yeah, Larry, I don't know if you see in the chat right now, but the music is still playing. Did you know that?
No, I'm not here. I'm having a little mic problem here at the beginning.
Yeah, it's been playing for 5 minutes. I didn't know it was going off. I thought we were. Everyone's kind of.
I don't hear the music. Yeah, sorry about that. Now is it gone?
Yeah, it's off now. Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody.
We were rocking out together for 5 minutes, hardcore right there. It was fun.
Great. Well, sorry about that. Yeah, I did not hear the music in my headphones. I may either have a headphone issue or a mic issue.
Oh,
I
it's all good.
apologize.
The chat was eating it up, man. It was fun.
Look at this. Larry, you lazy. Lazy. A million people saying music,
Yeah.
music.
Yeah, man, that was great.
Oh,
The
sorry.
comments were making me laugh. But yeah, man, to get back to what you were saying, yeah, I think so. I want to hear your take on this because you're in the locker room more than I am. You know the 49ers closer than I do. I do have a couple sources within 49ers organization. And, early off, we heard things like Kyle Shanahan was talked into drafting Trey Lance. Everybody I've talked to within the 49ers organization says that's hogwash. That Kyle Shanahan hand selected Trey Lance, that this is Trey Lance's, or that Trey Lance is Kyle Shanahan's guy. I wanted to get your take. Have you heard one way or the other about that?
No, I really haven't. I mean, the whole thing is whose guy it was. I think is all about pointing blame or trying to build somebody up as some guru. You know what I mean? The reality is they had a process, they went through it. They're all tied together. Trying to win the same thing. I don't get too much into this, my guy, his guy, your guy. I understand it exists. But like, I think if my assessment of the whole Trey pick was that the 49ers looked at Mahomes and Allen and said, we need somebody who can make plays off schedule. We need somebody who can, give us that mobility. And they looked at Trey and they loved his traits and they fell in love with the family and who he is and his whole prospect, the collection of who he is as a prospect, and that he's hardworking, he's athletic, he's smart, he wants it. He's inexperienced, he needs reps, and they just have not been able to give him the reps. And to me, that part of it, they kind of miss. I think they made a couple of these decisions in a vacuum, so to speak. So it's like, we want to get the best prospect and then take that prospect through the best process, which we think is sit for a year and then boom, you're ready to play. And then I think after he sat for a year, they saw that while he's still an awesome prospect, that he's going to have to play his way into a rhythm, and it's going to take some time. I would say, if you ask me, I would say a fair assessment for Trey would be like a year and a half. That would be a fair amount of time before you'd say, okay, he's ready to roll.
Yeah.
And that's just a guess, even on my part, right? Because we've put such a limited sample size. So I just think that they said, we'll take the best prospect and then take him through the best process, and we'll have the greatest chance of success. And I think that's what they're in the process of doing. Unfortunately, then there's injuries, and then they drafted Brock, and now he's played and sort of established himself. So it sounds like to me, he's with the players and with them, Brock has established himself with the 2 playoff wins and the way he played, as if he's healthy, he's going to be the number one guy. And then there's this opportunity that could arise this summer, as you know and I know, that could easily give Trey exactly what John just made it sound like it was a challenge to do, and that's give him reps and let him earn the job. And then if he's playing, the way it is, if Trey Lance is playing great football and the Niners are winning games, he's not coming out.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the NFL. There's no games. If it's meritocracy, it's a true meritocracy. If you got the goods and you're good enough, you're going to play. So the question is, who's going to get the first run? And I think that's probably going to be Brock if he's healthy. The question is, if Brock's not healthy and Trey plays one game and he wins, do they stay with Trey? How much momentum does Trey need to show? Does he need to show points? What does he need to show in their mind before he be ahead of Brock? So I think it's going to be, in a lot of ways, it's a really interesting quarterback discussion again, because there's going to be a third quarterback brought in. And to me, Ryan, that third quarterback, who that player is, defines this entire picture for all of us.
Yeah. So a couple of things on what you said. The first one you said is, if Brock is healthy, he's QB1. And I think I probably agree with that. But what I think is that
in the players' minds,
Yeah, in the players' minds for sure. But what I mean, even in Kyle's mind, probably if Brock Purdy was healthy right now, it'd probably be Brock Purdy's job based on what he did last year. But the thing is, he's not healthy, and I don't see him being able to participate week. I just don't see it. It
I
just
don't
doesn't
either.
make sense to me.
I would say he's going to be gone for all of September. That would be my guess.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Trey's going to get his opportunity, and like you said, it's a meritocracy. If Trey Lance comes out and wins the job, it's his job. We may never see Brock Purdy again. But based on the 49ers' history with quarterbacks, there's a good chance no matter who starts, one of these guys is going to play. Both of these guys are going to play at some point next year. But I really think that Trey Lance, the reason why I asked you, who do you think drafted who? Because we hear this narrative that Kyle Shanahan doesn't believe in Trey Lance based on the way he's played him. Whereas I think I see more to it than that. If we look at the games that Trey Lance has played, first you got an Arizona game, he had a broken finger. So that may have had something to do with why there's 16 design runs. So I'm not so sure that that's how he was going to use Trey Lance permanently. It may have just been for that game based on the fact that Trey Lance had a broken finger and it's probably harder for him to be accurate that way. Then you look at the Chicago game, it's a rain game, it's a monsoon game. I'm sure that's not going to be a prototypical game plan from Kyle Shanahan. You look at the Seattle game, that game was interesting. He started off really hot. Unfortunately, he went down second possession. But if you go back and look at the Houston Texans game, that's a game where he actually had time to prepare and how to use Trey Lance. And, Trey Lance started off a little rough, but by the 2-minute drill in that second quarter, he was cooking. And he played, 16 of 23, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 45-yard long, 31 yards rushing, 116 rating. And I think the window is just so small, but if we add some context to those games that we have saw in that small sample size, that Houston Texans game might be a better indicator of what we have with Trey Lance. And that's what excites me. I think I made this list, Larry, and I want to get your take, but I made this list of assets and everything that Brock Purdy has that Trey Lance doesn't. I think Trey Lance can learn outside of short area quickness. I think that's something that Brock Purdy is just going to be better at than Trey Lance, no matter what. But things like his accuracy, I think, is better right now. But I think Trey Lance can learn that. And then what else did I have for him? Experience. You got to have experience. The only way to get experience is to go out there and play. Outside of that, when it comes to arm strength, athletic, just size, I gave intelligence as a wash. Work ethic between the two is a wash. They both smart guys. They both work hard. They both have great attitudes. But the physical attributes of Trey Lance are things that Brock Purdy can't learn. But the things that Brock Purdy has outside of short area quickness, I think are things that Trey Lance possibly could learn. Whether he does or not, I don't know. But they're things that are learnable, if that's a word. I don't know. But that's what intrigues me about Trey Lance. And I just want to see, Larry, it's been since, I don't know who you would call the last franchise quarterback for the 49ers, maybe Jeff Garcia, or if you don't count Jeff Garcia, maybe Steve Young. It's been a long time since the 49ers had an elite franchise quarterback. Maybe Brock will become that. But Trey Lance excites me because I feel like he has a potential to do that if he gets the time and develops those things he's missing.
Oh, there's no question. That Houston game, let's talk about that game for a second.
Mm-hmm.
That game, the first half was a struggle and they didn't score points really that, or whatever the score was. It was really low scoring, or maybe it was no scores. I forget exactly, but I know there was not a lot done in the first half. But the second half, the Niners needed that win to go to the playoffs. This kid's in basically his first home start. It is his first home start. Basically is only his second start ever. Didn't play and really hadn't played a lot of football in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And still showed this awesome escapability and power to me. What was really exciting was the Niner offensive line did a pretty lousy job in that game. And he had some really, guys just absolutely in his lap.
Yeah.
And he just was so elusive. He sidestepped those guys and moved around, and his ability to move around in the pocket is so high end. And he is, I see a guy who, eventually he's going to be processing what he's seeing, once this is the beginning of him in the offense. I bet you if he played a game today, he would be processing things way faster than he did at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the arm strength, look at the escapability, and he's keeping his eyes down the field. A lot of quarterbacks, the real problem is they're afraid, and this guy is almost his biggest issue is that he's too unafraid. And
Yeah.
he tried to take on Isaiah Simmons at the goal line. He's
Mm-hmm.
trying to run over linebackers, and he's trying, and that's those, he's going to learn that you don't do that in the NFL. But he's not afraid. He's keeping his eyes. He's very calm for a young quarterback. He's keeping his eyes down the field. Most young quarterbacks' issue is they start to stare down the rush. He's not doing that. And he didn't do that even in the short sample size. Then all the experience under center in the play action game, the second level movement ability, the arm strength. Yeah, I mean, this kid is a really, really good prospect. And it comes just down to, when are they going to be able to play him? All I would say is this is the most important offseason. If he's back here or not. I mean, obviously if he's not, he's going to be somebody's number one quarterback, but then we don't really care as much. But if he's back here as the Niners 1 or 2 quarterback, I mean, the odds are he is going to play. So he's got to prepare himself this offseason to hit the ground running, because the one thing about it is, you don't get lots of opportunities, and Brock played really well. So if Trey's playing really well, he's going to stay in. But if he's not playing really well, he's probably not going to stay in. So it's one of those opportunities that it's like, it's a window. It's not like, and yet he wants to be a Niner for long term. And if they want him to be a Niner for long term, I think there's no doubt that he's going to be an all-time great. I really do. I don't think he's going to be good or pretty good I think he's going to be an all-time great. That's what I believe. That's how much I believe in him, as far as there is no box that he doesn't check other than refinement as a passer. He needs to be refined as a passer, but I'd rather have somebody who's got all the tools and dial them down. Brett Favre had to be dialed down. He went from Southern Miss. I was on the sideline at the East West Shrine Week when he came out, and remember he's just ripping it, everything off his back ear. And you could see the awesome arm strength and everything. But he also threw dumb passes and errant passes and all kinds of picks. And he actually, and then he gets with Holmgren, and you know what? A couple of years later, he's a Hall of Famer. And so it's like, that's what the Niners need. They need to find out who their best teacher. Maybe Shanahan's awesome as a play caller. Maybe Brian Greasy is this person that's an incredible teacher. They have somebody on their offensive staff has to be a phenomenal developer of quarterback talent. And if they don't have that guy, they ought to go pay money and bring that guy in, because you got young quarterbacks, and how you develop them will determine their future. And how they develop will determine if you guys win a Super Bowl, because it's either going to be Brock or Trey. I don't think Shanahan's getting another option to help him win a Super Bowl. Unless you believe the Rodgers and all the talk about that. Jordan Elliott brought that up. I don't know how you feel about Rodgers, but I just think to me, Ryan, the thing that makes me the most nervous is that I know Trey's going to be big time. I think James Wiseman could be big time, but he could be a gigantic marshmallow. So the fact that the Warriors moved off of Wiseman is already at times looking kind of bad. He's putting up some pretty good numbers, and he's super young. That trade could look awful in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
If the Niners trade Trey Lance, and they even get what I would do a trade for right now, which would be like a mid-first round pick and a starting caliber player, they could still look awful for like a decade. That's how good of a prospect I think Trey is. So I don't know how this is going to come together, but man, it's going to be a drama. It's going to be an absolute drama, because you can kind of see it. Did you see the tweet today where people were like, Niner Twitter over the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I saw you retweet that.
Gigantic brawl going on. I mean, it's like, how would you describe it?
Well, I mean, I think it's funny. I think a lot of people misunderstand how I feel about Brock Purdy, because I'm constantly defending Trey Lance. But I think Brock Purdy's really good quarterback, man. I know you were an early proponent of Brock Purdy, but I tweeted out, I think it was after a preseason game, that I'm intrigued by Brock Purdy. This guy is a gamer. Like I saw that in the preseason. And so I have no ill will towards Brock Purdy. And I think he's a good quarterback. It's just when I see Trey Lance, to go back to the Houston game, what you were talking about, I cover the 49ers for Bleach Report when Kaepernick was there. And I like Kaepernick. He was a hell of an athlete, had a cannon. But with Kaepernick, if his first read or two wasn't there, he was gone. He took off running. And what really sold me on Trey Lance is in that Houston game, you saw it. He would scramble a little bit, create some space, but his eyes were always up. He was always looking to pass. And once I saw that, I was like, this kid can be really good, because that's something that a lot of these quarterbacks that are considered mobile, they don't have. Once they feel pressure, they just take off and use their legs. Trey Lance is not that quarterback. I just really want a high-level franchise quarterback. I think you need that in order to win a Super Bowl. And now I think Brock Purdy can be good. I don't know how good, 15, 12, maybe top 10. I don't know. But I feel like Trey Lance's potential could put him in top 10 if he develops to be 80, 90% of his potential. He's a top 10 type quarterback. And that's what I want for the 49ers. And I just don't understand people judging him off such a small window. It's a little bit insane to me.
Well, you've got two things going on. You've got the small window. Like for us, our window is super small because we're not at practice every day. For Shanahan, Lynch, and their staff, they obviously, I'm sure they've got a more developed opinion about every single player on the roster than we do, because they're living with these guys, seeing them and interacting and, everything. So we'll see, but I'll say this, it's going to be the 49er off season. I'm covering this franchise. It is never freaking dull.
Yes.
Because there's this pressure, and I don't know if it comes from Jed or the fact that Eddie owned this franchise forever and was had this incredible standard that's kind of the standard they still kind of go by. If it's if there's power, if it's Dr. York, but I mean, there's just Shanahan and Lynch have had a lot of success, and yet you get this feeling that they're not made men in Ninerland with the ownership until they climb this mountaintop and deliver this Lombardi. And in a way, as a Niner fan, I fucking love it. Yeah. I just love it. I love the fact that we're all tied together in this misery until it gets done. I mean, not misery, but I mean, in this, you know what I'm saying? In this focus, this intense focus to win these, get over the mountaintop. And how do you do it? Do you do it with Brock? Do they get it done with Trey? They couldn't. They came close with Jimmy. They couldn't get it done. They came close with Kaepernick. They couldn't get it done. Would they have gotten it done with Alex Smith? Who knows? Yeah. But all these, the drama just never ends. Jordan Elliott threw out. Well, first let me read this one. Glass half full guy, $4.99. Would you guys be open to bringing Khalil Mack? Seems like a solid pass rusher to me. I don't like Khalil Mack. He's not very good. He doesn't do it for me. Yeah, but I mean, what do you have to pay to get him? Yeah. And what are the charge? Is Telesco just doesn't want him anymore? I mean, what? Khalil? Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say about the Niners and Khalil Mack's about 255, 260, and it seems like most of the Niner rushers are in that 270 plus range. Mm-hmm. By the way, anybody who watches any of these prospects this week, go watch the film of the Northwestern kid who you can't pronounce his name, Anabare or whatever. He is freaky great. He's 280 pounds. He's a defensive end, and he runs like 4.6 or something like that. It was a ridiculous time. And then I saw him in the Senior Bowl or whatever practices it was. He's just forklifting offensive linemen that are like 310, just back into the quarterback. I watched his highlight reel. It's like beyond freaky. I mean, I don't know. This guy's probably going top 10 before it's all said and done. But you gotta look at the highlight reel from the defensive lineman from Northwestern. It's off the charts. But this is a great draft. That kid Ramirez. There's one of my favorite players in the entire draft. Same school as had Max Crosby, Eastern Michigan. Has I think his name is. I think it's Juan Ramirez, and he's a defensive end. and he's just got crazy bend, had this ridiculous flattened play to the quarterback in the Shrine game where I was just like, I had to rewind it like 5 times. I'm like, are you kidding me? That guy just cut that angle. And you just watch it. It's just ridiculous movement ability and agility at like 255. And super productive edge rusher to yesterday at the combine post the best 3-cone drill of anybody. I mean, it was, or of any of the defensive linemen. So, he's just got
these
this
pass rushers,
freaky torque. It's just, you got to see this guy.
These pass rushers, Larry, that they're turning out now from college are insane athletes.
Insane.
And that's why you got to focus so much now on protecting, like offensive line has to be a huge factor for all teams, but particularly 49ers. I think that's, in my opinion, that's what I want them to focus on in this draft, because these defensive ends and these pass rushers are just freaky athletic. You can just only hope to contain them a little bit. You can't really stop them. But you need to bulk up this pass protection on the 49ers. That's my number one focus. That's what I hope, Larry, that they trade up into the second round and grab like a Darnell Wright or something like that, early second round.
Tight end from Georgia?
Or no, the right tackle. Am I saying his name? Is Darnell Wright, right? The right tackle.
I thought Wright might have been the tight end. Let me see.
He's the Tennessee right tackle. I'm
thinking of Darnell Washington.
Yeah.
Darnell Wright. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's something like that. If they can grab a top, I want them to upgrade over Mike McGlinchey. I don't want them to re-sign Mike McGlinchey at $15 million. Mike McGlinchey on a rookie contract is one thing, but at $15 million, I don't want that. I want to see them upgrade over Mike McGlinchey, and I don't think that exists in free agency. I think the only way they're going to do that is if they move up into like the early second round and grab one of these right tackles that are out there. I really like Darnell Wright as an example of a guy that I think could be an upgrade over Mike McGlinchey in year one. So that's really what I'm hoping the 49ers do with their first pick this year. And they got 11 draft picks, Larry, but they're not going to be able to sign all 11 draft picks. So they might as well bundle some of them and move up.
Well, I mean, that's the nice thing about where they're at right now is that this last offseason, not only did they have, a good year, they didn't have a first round pick, and yet they still wound up with an exceptionally deep draft class. I mean, you go back and look at how many players the 49ers are going to have in the next 2 or 3 years from last year's draft class. Danny Gray. Mm-hmm. I think we've only seen the beginning of Danny Gray. Danny Gray is a young kid who's going to grow into, man status, and he's a 4.2 burner with hands. Mm-hmm. And believe me, I'm telling you, I talked to him about it. He said, when I get in the end zone, people are going to see I got all kinds of dance moves. I said, I want to see it, man. I said, I want to see it. Cause and this guy is legit. And then Tay Martin, the other kid that they signed, who was on the practice squad all year, I'm telling you, his ball skills are phenomenal.
Big body.
If Brock Purdy or Trey Lance become the guy, Tay Martin is going to be their new best friend. He's got Jawan Jennings like ball skills, and he's just leaner. He's a little quicker. He's one of these guys that would be a really, really dangerous red zone guy. If they can just get him on the field. So they look good at wide receiver. I mean, they got a bunch of young talent. Burford's young, Zakel's young, Poe's young on their offensive line. Obviously Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, TDP. I mean, this is just on offense. Talia Davis, Drake Jackson, Marcelino's a baller. I mean, they could use a couple more players in the secondary. Hafanga, Womack is a nice player. But they've done a nice job. I mean, they're pretty fortified. They just need, I'm never worried about just swing for home runs, go after big time talent all throughout the draft. And if the more the merrier, because the reality is there's a miss rate. You're going to miss if you take big swings, you're going to miss every now and then on somebody. So if you can hit at a decent rate, you got 11 picks. Yeah, man, you could have a tremendously deep roster. I mean, what was the difference between the Niners and the Eagles? In my opinion, I talked about it with people I know in the personnel community in August, that the Niners and the Eagles were the best rosters in the NFC by far. Yeah, by far. Agreed. And they're still the best rosters in the NFC by far. And we'll see what happens with the Eagles and Niners this offseason. But Mansa says, or bring in Mike Holmgren. Yeah, I talked to Mike just in the last few months. Oh, really? He's pretty happy. He's pretty happy. He's pretty happy doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Jose Ramirez. That's it. I said Julio Ramirez, maybe. Charles Fleming says Jose Ramirez. Yeah.
Mhm.
Guy's ridiculously good. Okay. We'll move off the quarterbacks for a minute.
Okay.
Somebody's gonna, that's gonna solve itself.
Yeah.
What, nobody does this by themselves, right?
Mhm.
It's all, the best teams are there. I mean, and you got to have a winning equation. For the Chiefs, their winning equation is they got Mahomes, they got a ton of speed, they got a really good interior offensive line, an outstanding play caller in Andy Reid,
Mhm.
two difference makers up front in Frank Clark and Chris Jones, two speedsters on that second level in Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, and then they got all kinds of playmakers on the back end with Snead and Point they got a bunch of guys. I mean, they
Mhm.
really a bunch of guys. McDuffie, the rookie this year, they just got a lot of speed. So, in your mind? Let's just assume that between Brock and Trey, the quarterback position is going to be played at a contender's level.
Mhm.
What's the next thing the Niners need to do, in your opinion? What's the number one priority outside of obviously figure out the quarterback situation? Number one priority to go into the Super Bowl and winning it. What do they got to do?
Well, I have 3 of them, but my number one priority, Larry, is what I talked about. I think it's the offensive line, but it's particularly the right tackle. The 49ers run the ball, I think it's about 70% to the left. And it's because they got Trent Williams over there. If the 49ers can get a top end right tackle, they'll be able to run the ball to both directions, which is huge. And then they'll have protection for their quarterback, which has been an issue for the 49ers for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that Mike McGlinchey is responsible for the quarterbacks being injured. It's not really the case actually at all, but more protection for the quarterback is going to hopefully translate to longevity for these quarterbacks. We got to keep them healthy. And to me, that has to start on the offensive line, particularly the right tackle. I think the 49ers have enough guys. If they can especially if they can re-sign Jake Brindle to play center, or they got Poe, or they got Sakel. One of those guys will work out at center. I want to see Burford take that sophomore leap like Aaron Banks did at the guard spot. That right tackle spot is the biggest question for me. I'm not convinced Colton McKivitz can do it. I'm not convinced that moving Sam Burford out there is the solution. They're not going to re-sign Mike McGlinchey. I highly doubt that. That, to me, is the number one focus. They have to upgrade that spot. After right tackle, my second thing is interior pass rush. A lot of people want edge, and I understand that. But I think if you got Nick Bosa, Armstead, and you could upgrade and get like an actual nose tackle, a guy who can stuff the run on the interior, and not only that, push the line back, possibly on pass rush. And then you guys got like Drake Jackson. If they can sign a Minahu, they're good. I think the 2 biggest things for me, right tackle on offense, interior nose tackle on defense. This game is won in the trenches. After quarterback, there's no more important position than offensive line. And then after that, it's defensive line, in my opinion. Those are the 2 positions I want to see him focus. After that, Larry, I'm going to go with a tight end or a safety, one of the 2. And then cornerback depth. That's my 5th. That's what I want them to draft. I would love the 49ers to have a 2 tight end package, an actual threat at tight end. You remember like Vernon Davis and Delaney Walker, how deadly they were together? I would love to see Kyle Shanahan have that in his bag and see what he can do with that as well.
Those are good, man. Those are all really good. Mansa Torre says we also added Tyron Johnson. Do you know that name? I don't know Tyron.
I didn't know that. When did we add him? Recently?
You're not talking about the Dallas offensive lineman.
Hmm.
No. I have to look that one up. Glass half full guy says, "What's a realistic spot Niners could trade up into in the draft?" And it depends. What are they offering? Are they offering players? I mean, the only players I could see being moved would be like Kinlaw, Ambry Thomas. They don't seem like they're in the mode to trade it. They're good players away. They like their core a lot. Those are the only 2 guys I think that have value that I think anybody would consider trading for. I don't know. I mean, packaging their picks. Can you package the picks that are those late thirds? I don't know if you can even move those picks. I know you didn't used to be able to. If you can, they had 3 third-round picks. Let's just say theoretically, you could probably get into the late first with 3/3 and a future pick, of some kind. Might have
Yeah.
to add another pick, but those 3/3 and a future pick would probably get you into the late first if
Yeah.
somebody really, really wanted depth.
I would love to see him take two thirds this year and maybe a third next year, move up into the early second round. I think this right tackle group that's coming up in the draft, there's so many talented guys. I feel like if they're in the early second round, they could probably grab a starting right tackle, year one starter.
Such a hard position to evaluate. Skoronski from Northwestern is the number one offensive tackle in the draft.
Hmm.
He's probably going to go in the 15 to 25 range.
Hmm.
Broderick Jones from Georgia is just a ridiculous athlete, 6'4", 315 pounds, but his movement abilities just really stands out.
Hmm.
You mentioned Darnell Wright, the kid from Maryland who's Jalen Duncan. He's a good football player. There's a number of guys here. But to me, the real emphasis is on the offensive line is you need guys who are just really tough
Yeah.
because the offensive line is when you really set your tone. And if there's anything that common denominator I've seen as far as who succeeds, who's a bust, that kind of stuff, there's differing levels of athleticism. There's differing levels of arm length and all the different measurables, jumping ability and hand strength and all the different things they want. But in this, for like a Niner situation, I would say, that when you mix in the formation variation, the trick plays, all the motion, stunting, all the motions and shifts and all that kind of stuff, different personnel groups, and I just think that you got to be really smart and you got to be tough. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the smart, tough combo guys, and that's what I think they got in like Zakel, for example. The
Hmm.
guys, you can see it. He really plays with a lot of toughness, and he's going to be a real physical offensive lineman. And he went to Fordham, right? And he's smart.
Hmm.
He's a really smart kid. And that's a really great prospect. So I just thought they just need to. I don't know. You got to find guys that you like. Obviously, they don't always have to be the highest rated guys, but to me, when I've seen the guys that don't make it, and then you get to know him and you're like, hey, that's a big guy, but that guy's kind of a marshmallow,
Hmm.
It's like, and I don't want to name names but Niner fans know the names. I mean, guys that you drafted
Yeah.
that you thought, man, this guy's going to be terrific. And he just winds up being a big marshmallow and hurt all the time. Then you got to cut him and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Or yeah, like Joe Staley, Joe Staley's like a tough guy.
Stud.
At the end of the day, that offensive line job, it's basically just like a short area fist fight almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, athleticism matters, but it's toughness matters more. And
Hmm.
I just that's like if you look at that New York Giant team that beat the Patriots and won the Super Bowl with Sean O'Hara and all those guys, that was like five guys across the line there. They were all just these tough Eastern, came out of Eastern colleges, played in cold weather, brawler types, all had that kind of toughness. To me, that's what wins on the offensive line. So I hope they go in that direction. I don't know who they need to get,
Yeah.
but they definitely need to address it because you're right. Look at Brock's numbers even this year when he was kept clean versus not clean. He completed 84% of his passes
It's a big
when they
difference.
kept him clean. What does that tell you? Build a fortress in front of these guys. Trey Lance just got knocked out for the year with a terrible injury, all because they didn't block well enough probably up front. Probably. That's maybe too harsh on the offensive line, but running up the middle. So it would be great what I think would be number one need would be like, give me a young Lane Johnson. Give me somebody who can play left tackle
Yes.
or right tackle
Hmm.
and is just tough as hell. And somebody you're going to just be able to, he's going to be a tone setting. I'm looking for a tone setting, tough guy, offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Like, who I loved this year? One of my favorite picks in the draft was Tampa took that kid, Gadecki. I think his name's Luke Gadecki.
Hmm.
And he's just a ridiculous, this guy's just moving at the snap, loves contact, nasty blocker, finisher. Obviously they had injuries on their offensive line, so they had some problems, but that guy's just a destroyer up front. Find a couple of guys who could be. The one thing is I don't mind letting Brendel go because he's going to get an offer that's going to outweigh what they want to pay. But I'd like to see that center instead of being like a 280 guy. I can be more like a 330 guy or 320 guy with quickness who can like hold off the Chris Joneses of the world and keep them out of Trey's face or Brock's face. Because I think you want to win the Super Bowl, you better think directly. And directly is Chris Jones is owning that piece of real estate. Yeah. Find somebody who can step up to him and block him. I mean, there is a tough task.
Let me ask you this, Larry, because I wasn't at training camp last year. I'm going to go this year, so hopefully I can see you there. But from what I saw in the video,
bring a hat. It's hot.
It's hot.
Yeah. A lot of sun.
Yeah. From what I saw in the video, Jason Poe looked like a tree stump. Like you could not move the guy. And I was more intrigued with him at center than what I saw from Zakelj, just on video. I wasn't there. Can you compare the two and what you saw between those two guys?
Well, I mean, totally different body types. Poe is like 6'1", natural athlete. I mean, this guy can play fullback. He can catch it. But he needs an NFL weight room off season to really build into his upper body that much more. But he's got unbelievable leverage. He's never really played center. I asked him about it. I couldn't believe it. Or maybe he's played a little, but it wasn't a lot. He's played mostly guard. They haven't penciled in at right guard. I think he's a natural center. I think he could be like a 10-year starter at center.
Yeah.
He's a great personality, hilarious, maybe the funniest guy in the entire room. And yeah, seriously, great personality, unbelievable. And go check out my video where I did with him. He would be like one of those guys we'd check in with almost every day. He's just a good guy. I like him. I like him a lot. I mean, how about that little crackback block where he came across the formation in the preseason and just detonated on the guy? I mean, the speed and the power that he delivered on that block was awesome. Yeah. And, I think he's a contender for the center position. And then Zakelj could be, I think, is either the future starter at right guard. I mean, if you told me that Chris Forster believed in Spencer Burford to kick out to tackle, I'd be okay with a Zakelj Burford right side because I think Zakelj can play right guard.
Okay.
I think that's kind of his spot. But Burford's at right guard. So maybe he could share it. Maybe I could see them letting Brunskill go and letting Zakelj and Burford share the right guard spot since he shared it last year with Brunskill. Maybe they'll have more of the same. Maybe upgrade at the center spot and get yourself a right tackle.
I trust Chris Forster, like you said.
He's a great coach.
I trust him. He's a great coach. But I will say from watching Burford this last year, it does make me nervous of seeing him kick out to the right tackle spot. I know he played that in college. It's just I didn't see enough from Burford to be like, okay, this guy, he's a bookend. Throw him out there. But Chris Forster would know more than me. But
he doesn't have the quickness ability in the feet right now. But he did play there in college. He played a lot of right tackle, so it's like he's done it. He in the NFL level though, these edge rushers are a different breed. You got to have a real. I mean, look, you saw Lane Johnson. He's so unbelievable that he's the one offensive lineman that's allowed to false start, and we instead of calling it, we compliment him.
Right.
It would be like an off defense. Can you imagine if Bosa was offsides like all the time, and we're just like, hey man, guy's got a lightning first step.
Yeah.
He's got 42 sacks and he's leading the league.
Yeah, and I noticed a couple guys in your comments talking about how short Poe is, but I feel like that can almost be an advantage because he's the leverage at center, right? Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it would bother me if he was not the center. If he was any other position, his height would bother me. But at center, being right there in the middle with that short, with that leverage, like I said, he's like a tree stump. I think that can almost be an advantage for Jason.
I love the anchor too. He's got a good ability to anchor. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting one for sure on the offensive line. We got this one from Mansa. It says wide receivers Tyron Johnson, the reserve contract, Purdy's best case scenario, 6-7 months, or is that 6.7 months? Wow. 0.7. 0.7. So he's got it down to can you give us a date on that? I would prioritize defensive tackle / defensive end and depth. We also need more 4-3 options at running back and wide receiver. I love that last one. you know what? Add explosive athletes who can play their position and bring speed, because it's amazing how the fastest teams always wind up standing at the end,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And the Niners could use a little bit more speed. Um, I agree, because if you have home run hitter speed, then you're only one play away from scoring. You know,
Right.
that's when you have Tyreek Hill. Yeah, you're down 7, but you got Tyreek Hill. You know,
Yeah.
I'd
And
kind of be
Waddle.
looking for Tyreek
Yeah.
Hill.
Yeah. McDaniel did a great job bringing Hill and Waddle, like two of the fastest receivers, and they were trouble for a lot of
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because any play, and I mean, even games where they're getting dominated, you still have a chance. Glass half full guy says, as a 49er fan, I get the sense they like the idea of Trey, but when it comes to committing to him, they hesitate. I could be wrong, but I get that feeling sometimes seeing Lynch comments recently. That is so well said. That is true. I don't think they like Trey. I think they love Trey.
Yeah.
I think that Trey, I think they see exactly what I see, that this kid is a lock, he's a absolute lock to be a very good player.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to be tomorrow, and it's going to take, in my estimation, 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Are we all going to be cool with that? Can we, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's kind of, I mean, in a real simple, folksy kind of a way, that's kind of the deal, right? I mean, and some people are, and some people aren't. And some people who aren't are saying that they are because they want it so bad. You know what I mean? And it's like they're in off-season mode. In off-season mode, it's easy to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't care if we win on Sunday, because we don't have a game on Sunday. We don't play for a long time, and it's all just in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But when you got a game Sunday, and you're going to go with who you think's going to win that game, and I think they're going to go, if everybody's healthy and at the same rough area of where they were last week, saw them on the field, I think they're going to go with Brock over Trey. But even that, what I just said, is a total question mark, because these guys suffer the kinds of injuries. I mean, literally, the guy had his arm almost torn off.
Yeah.
Who knows what the heck he's going to throw like after this.
Yeah.
And Trey's injury, his thing was going the wrong direction. So who knows, how that he's bouncing back from that. I mean, it's all TBD. I mean, I feel the same way about these guys as I felt about Joe Burrow coming after his injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's like catastrophic injury.
Yeah.
We'll see. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a exclamation point. It's a question mark.
Yeah. And I'm not sold on Brock Purdy being back in 6 months. I think that's absolute best case scenario. And it's more likely, in my opinion, and just from people I've talked to, that it's not going to be 6 months. It could be 7, 8, it could be 12. Like, we really don't know. And even when he does come back, it's not like he was known for arm strength. So is he going to come back at 100%? There's a lot of questions surrounding Brock Purdy. And then, even if he's 100% healthy, is he going to have the sophomore slump that a lot of players in this league have? So to me, there's a lot of questions with him. And to go back to what you said about Trey Lance, that you think he's going to be great, it's just a matter of time, and that a lot of people don't have that patience. For me, man, I've got nothing but patience. I've been watching the 49ers for my entire life. I was born in 79. I got to see them win, 5 Super Bowls in my life. I remember 3 of them. And I want my kids to see the same thing. So if I got to sacrifice a year to develop that greatness from Trey Lance that we think he can become, it's 100% well worth it, because since Garcia, we haven't had anybody even close to that level on a consistent basis. So for me, I'm 100% ready to commit to developing Trey Lance, if it takes a year or 2, whatever it takes, because I don't feel like we're going to win that Super Bowl until we get an elite quarterback.
I agree. Or at least elite quarterback play, like the Ravens got out of Joe Flacco, like the Eagles got out of Nick Foles. Yeah. I mean, essentially, those guys, for the period they were in, were great players. They were just like in that zone. So that's what you need. That's probably more what we're wishing for, because to ask Trey Lance or Brock Purdy to become an elite of elite, that's probably lower percentage. But if they're good enough, I'll say this, watching Brock operate, it's clear that he's got several of the nuances of the position down.
Yes.
And then when you think about that and being around that, Trey, no doubt, saw all of that. And so I'm eager to see his development curve right here, because he just was given a template of literally, how to process or go through your progressions better than what we even saw with Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Literally Brock would go through the progressions. He's looking here. He's looking here. He's looking here. He's looking here. Now he's back here, or he's play action. He's turning around. He's playing with rhythm. He's playing with pace. He's not throwing everything a rocket. Sometimes he's taking a little off, whatever, but he's placing. It's about ball placement in the NFL so much with some of these big plays, especially all these, all the stuff around the line of scrimmage. It's like, it's all about, do you hit the guy in stride? Doesn't matter if you hit him fast or hit him soft, but you just got to hit him in stride so it all kind of meshes. So those nuances were all fully right there on display for him. I'm eager to see what he looks like, because now take in a guy who's got real explosive ability to separate from the rush and real arm strength to, I broke free. I got a new spot. And now Danny Gray is all by himself.
Yeah. Danny
Gray. That could happen quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to some of that too. So who knows, but the interesting thing is, build the best team you can around these guys. And on offense, I mean, I look at the offense, build that fortress of the offensive line, add maybe one explosive element, and then that third quarterback. Who do you want that third quarterback to be?
I've been thinking about this one. I mean, obviously I think they need to draft somebody in the late rounds or undrafted free agent for the practice squad. But I mean, who I want it to be would be like, who I want to be is probably who we're not going to get, but I would love it to be a Jacoby Brissett. I think that's going to be out of their range, but Jacoby Brissett's shown that he can start and win games in this league last year for Cleveland. I think that's out of the range. He's probably going to find a backup spot, a number 2 spot, or maybe even a starter spot somewhere. So I think it's more realistic. And the other guy that I would want, who I think we can afford, would be Marcus Mariota. I think would be an ideal situation for the 49ers. If you have Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Marcus Mariota in the quarterback room, I think that's a phenomenal quarterback room. The question is whether a guy like Marcus Mariota is willing to accept that third spot right now, because I think coming into this, he's going to know, it's Brock and Trey before him, most likely. But, over the last year, 16 teams used 3 quarterbacks. 49ers used 4. So, anybody coming to the 49ers might have a little bit of confidence that they're going to see the field at some point. Hopefully that's not. Hopefully the 49ers can find whoever their quarterback is and keep them healthy, to where the third string quarterback really doesn't matter. But, based on what we saw last year, and, hats off to Josh Johnson, but we really don't want another Josh Johnson experience if, push comes to shove and we have to use a quarterback like that in a crucial time for the season.
I think I want a rookie quarterback to be the third guy, because you're already got young quarterbacks and you got a quarterback coach, and there's intriguing guys like people, Grant's talking about Stetson Bennett. I don't like Stetson Bennett, but I like Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. I really like Clayton Tune from Houston. I really like Jake Haener a lot from Fresno State. I kind of would be intrigued by Max Duggan. The other guys, not as much. I like mobility, and I think you got to have some mobility within the pocket. I like Tanner McKee as a thrower of the football. He's accurate. He's big. Throws the beautiful ball.
When would you have to get a guy like that, though?
He takes one hit in the NFL and he's done. I mean, he's too fragile. He's too, you got to either have enough heft to take a hit, or you got to have some ability to sidestep a hit. I'll tell you the guy that I kind of like, and I talked to a couple people who really don't like him as a player, but I like Malik Cunningham from Louisville. And I saw him in the All-Star game, and, he is a dynamic player. I mean, 6 feet, but I mean, this guy passed for almost 8,000 yards and 62 touchdowns in his career. I mean, he needs some development, but I mean, you're talking about, I'm not saying he's Lamar. He's not Lamar, even though he played at the same school as Lamar. But I mean, you're talking about a guy who really can, if you give him an avenue, this guy can burn you for 150 yards on the ground in a blink of an eye, just because he's just so explosive running with the football. So I to me, if you're going to have a rookie quarterback in the draft, you might need it to be a practice squad guy. And to me, I could go with like a Mariota or a Clayton Tune or somebody like that up front, but I would, I'd rather save the money that I'm paying to like a Mariota, and go with more of a, at the end of the day, come on, between Brock and Trey, you have to keep one of those guys healthy come playoff time, right? You can't sit there. I mean, I would rather have more money spent on the secondary and the D line and the offensive playmakers and you know what I'm saying, than spend a lot of money on that third quarterback. But I want to have a third quarterback that I think is going to be a threat, not just a guy who's there because he lives around the neighborhood or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's my concern, Larry, is that Brock Purdy, I mean, who knows if he's going to even play next year? There's an absolute possibility that Brock Purdy can't even play next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing what his surgeons say after he goes in and he has surgery, and what they think his timeline is going to be, because that's going to be a key factor. But, Brock Purdy's coming off the elbow surgery. Trey Lance coming off an ankle surgery. If they're going to continue to use Trey Lance the way they were using him in the past, running the ball so much, I don't know how confident I am that he's going to be able to finish the season. So that's why I say you got to go after a veteran who can actually win games, because there's a high possibility that player, that third string quarterback, is going to be called upon this coming year. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's a strong possibility, and I would hate to see the season just go down the toilet because they haven't thought about that. I would be a little nervous with a rookie quarterback, and only a rookie quarterback at the third option. Brock Purdy's are very rare. I think a lot of people don't realize that. I looked it up recently, yesterday actually. Seventh string quarterbacks, on average, their career is 8 games. That's their career on average, a seventh string quarterback, 8 games. So, a lot of people think, hey, well, the 49ers unlocked this formula for Brock Purdy, and they can go find another Brock Purdy. I'm just not buying it, because Brock Purdy is the exception. I would say he's not the rule necessarily, and, guys like Tom Brady, there's a handful of those guys that are late round draft picks that end up having success in this league, but I don't think it's very common. And so I would like to ensure themselves with a veteran quarterback.
Mariota just played so well in that game against the Niners last year. I just think in some ways he'd be a perfect, if you ask me, what do you want Trey to be able to do in this offense that you didn't have from Jimmy, over the last few years? And it was what Mariota did in the Niner game against the Falcons this year, where he basically puts enormous amount of pressure on the 49er defense in short yardage. We're talking about second and 1, third and 1, sometimes fourth and 1 situations. On the mesh point, he'd hold the mesh point. You didn't know if he had it. He is a really, really good runner. I forgot how good of a runner Marcus Mariota is. He's 6'4", 220, but he runs really, really well. I mean, really well. And then you're talking about a guy who, in that game at least, demonstrated pretty good accuracy. He completed 93% of his passes in that game. I mean, a lot of them were just kind of stop routes to Drake London, and I think Pitts was kind of hurt, but he played that day. And it just, he overly impressive, but they dominated the time of possession and they won the game. They beat the Niners. So I was impressed by Mariota. Now, Mariota's season went south from there. He lost the job to Ritter.
Yeah.
He had a knee injury in December, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly what his physical status is, but he might be the kind of guy that is willing to, be in a spot that he knows is favorable, like San Francisco with all these weapons and this defense. And maybe you pay him $5 million. And I think that's my budget. I don't think I want to spend more than $5 million on the quarterback spot because I want to get some other guys. I want to make sure that the rest of my team's pretty fortified around my quarterback. But if I could get Mariota, I think that would be ideal. He wanted to play, and I know he was mad that he lost out to Ritter. And how will he be if he loses out to Purdy and Lance, which we expect him to? Well, I don't know. I don't know about that, but guys have different options in different seasons. I'm sure there might be somebody in the league that wants to give him a starting job, but maybe not. And if not, maybe this is a good enough spot. I do think that would be my ideal quarterback room would be Brock, Trey, and Marcus.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we both agree there. I think Marcus has shown that he has, the ability to run the play option, or excuse me, the read option. And he also he was pretty, at least against us, he was very accurate in that short game. And that's a lot of time, that's all Kyle Shanahan's going to ask him to do. So I'd feel comfortable with that quarterback room as well.
Yeah. Some people think draft Jake Haener. Only thing I would say about Jake Haener is, let's just say you've got a Mariota and now those are your three quarterbacks. I think it'd be very difficult to keep Jake Haener on your practice squad all year. I think somebody would pluck him off.
Yeah.
And then Todd says, does Malik Cunningham remind you of Lamar Jackson? He's not the creative runner that Jackson is. And Jackson also was like 6'3" and is 6'3" and change, where Malik is like 6 feet.
Yeah.
But Malik is not afraid. He throws a good ball. I like him. Yeah. And he's probably going to go undrafted. And you're talking about a guy who, I think he's significantly better than Lamar's backup, the kid from Utah, Huntley, who's established himself already as a good NFL player. I saw him at Utah, and I've seen Cunningham. Now, I talked to an NFL draft guy last weekend about all the quarterbacks, and he doesn't like Cunningham, doesn't feel like he can make plays from the pocket. But I do. I think that he would definitely be a great practice squad quarterback because I think he's got a howitzer for an arm. He's got explosive running. I mean, you're talking about a guy who might be sub 4.4 as far as pure straight line speed. He doesn't have that Lamar cutting back and forth, make you miss. He's not going to sidestep and juke you. He's much more of a straight line speed guy, but the straight line speed is great. So I maybe I'll look up Malik Cunningham, what he did.
You brought up an interesting point in regards to these quarterbacks. I mean, that's the thing is if you showcase them in the preseason and they look amazing, it's really hard to sneak them onto the practice squad. I was telling people that about Brock Purdy. I'm like, there's no way the 49ers are going to not sign Brock Purdy to the 53 because if they try to put him on a practice squad, somebody is going to take him based on the way he played in the preseason. So it's difficult, right? You're going to snatch a guy, you're going to draft a guy. If he looks good in the preseason, it's hard to keep him on that practice squad. So it's kind of a bit of a juggling act that you have to do there.
But, it's amazing. There's a lot of, I was absolutely sure he was going to make the roster,
Me too.
Well before the cut down.
Yeah.
And I guaranteed it. I'm like, yeah. And I tweeted it like the day before. I'm like, yeah, or the couple days before. I'm like, Brock's obviously a lock to make the roster. And that's where I got the beat writers going, lock? Yeah. What do you mean lock?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, he's a lock. Absolutely, he's a lock. I started to doubt myself. I'm like, maybe these guys know it better than me. I'm like, no, this guy's a lock. He's an absolute lock to make the roster. They're not exposing this kid based on the way he looked in the preseason. Once he ran the 2-minute drill to perfection and ran the play clock down to 1, it was a done deal right there. As far as you show that level of competitiveness and awareness, and that's how you win football games at the end is is the way Russell Wilson. Why do you think Russell Wilson's like 16-4 or whatever against the Niners?
Yeah.
Because they get a lead and suddenly he bleeds the clock down and then he runs for a first down and then he bootlegs for another first down. And all of a sudden you're like, how did we get beat? And it's like, he's been doing that to the Niners and Brock and a lot. If there's one guy that Brock reminds me of, it's Russell Wilson in that he,
2014, Russell Wilson.
There's better throwers and Russell's, I think, a better thrower than Brock.
Better
arm strength, I think. But as far Brock may have is accurate, but Russell has better arm strength. But they're both deadly on the little bootleg game.
Yeah.
So I mean, now with Shanahan having that, I think that was a big part of the Shanahan offense that Jimmy didn't do great, and those have got to be the little layup pass to the guy right there, and it's like. Brock ran that offense really, really well. So I think from Shanahan's perspective, he's probably like, hey, I got a guy that can run my offense and I can use the bootleg game and I can do the play action game. And when Brock flips around after, unlike Jimmy, who really couldn't handle the play action from under center and have an account of where everybody was, Brock, when he flips around after play action, turns his back on the defense, turns back around, he knows where everybody is and he's like delivering the football.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy never did that. Jimmy always turned around and then had to assess where everybody was and then would deliver the football.
Right.
So it's little things like that where I think Brock's spatial awareness is pretty special. That you see that kind of stuff, but he also had an injury that is just, to me, kind of, it's almost like the all bets are off injury because it's the injury to what makes him as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that, what if we don't know, his arm looked like it almost got ripped out of the socket. What if all of a sudden there's major nerve damage in there and he just doesn't quite have the same accuracy anymore because he just doesn't have the same accuracy anymore.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's so unknown with Brock. Yeah. I actually got, and I thought the same thing. I got an argument with Rich Madrid during the preseason. I said, and shout out to Rich, but I said, there's no way Brock Purdy is not going to be on this 53-man roster. And he said I was just out of my mind. And it ended up being right, man. I saw what you saw in Brock Purdy. I probably not as much, but I did, you
saw the moxie. You could see the accuracy,
the playmaking,
the rhythm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, didn't you see it? He plays with a lot of rhythm. Now, by the way, there's a phenomenal article up, Ryan. I don't know if you've seen this one. Jordan Elliott is in Indy, and he was talking to Quincy Avery, Trey Lance's quarterback coach, and it's entitled "The 49er It's a quote from Quincy Avery about Trey. He says, the 49er organization has someone who is really special. And it's an extended article where he asks him several questions about Trey, and Quincy Avery talks about Trey. Yeah, I mean, the Niners are sitting so in such a great spot right now because they really have two terrific people, terrific young prospects, and it's not going to be, these guys are not going to, like, Trey and Brock will get along way better than Joe and Steve ever did. Yeah. Better than any two will, these guys will get along fine because, they're both just that good of people. So that's the good news. And now it's just a matter of what else do they need to get it done? In my mind, they got to get an offensive tackle. They've got to get a defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. And that defensive tackle has got to be, somebody who they need kind of an anchor defensive tackle, like somebody who absolutely clogs the middle.
Yes.
Who's really strong at the point of attack. Now, I'd love to see them also get some other interior rushers, like a Kevin Givens type, a couple Kevin Givens types. I mentioned that kid from Northwestern. I'm in love with that guy. He's just amazing. Atabare or whatever. But they need some interior rushers, an edge rusher, an interior anchor tackle, somebody who's just, truly a two-gapper that cannot be moved. I would love to see a home run hitting type running back or, tight end, whether it be a really fast tight end to go with to go with Kittle or a really fast, explosive running back that catches the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah.
That would be nice. And then, as you said, cornerback depth. You can never have enough good DBs.
Yes.
I love it would be great to get a tone setting DB in the draft. Jamie Robinson from Florida State, I think, is that guy. I would definitely use, based on what I've seen, I would use one of my 3rd round picks on Jamie Robinson or the kid Brown, Jair Brown from Penn State. Those two guys look tremendous. And there's several front. The nice thing for the Niners is they really need the tight end, like another tight end, maybe 2. They really could use defensive line. And according to Adam Peters, he says that he told Matt Barrows that he thinks defensive end, defensive tackle, and tight end are far and away the deepest positions in the draft.
Yeah.
That's great news for the 49ers because they really could use bodies at all 3 of those spots.
Yeah. I mean, when's the last time the 49ers had a 10 tight end outside of George Kittle that contributed in any major way?
Yeah.
I mean, there hasn't been. Delaney Walker, Vernon Davis was last time the 49ers had 2 tight ends that actually contributed. And I would love to see what Kyle Shanahan could dial up with 2 tight ends. I think it could be pretty amazing. And hopefully they invest in the tight end. I think they are. It seems like they're talking to tight ends. I predicted they're going to draft a tight end. I think I don't know. I got right tackle, nose tackle, and then to me it's a toss-up between safety and tight end. Maybe safety's a greater need, but I feel like tight end is right there. And there's a lot of good ones in this draft. They could maybe draft a tight end first just because I think there's safeties tend to go later on. I think there's going to be some good safeties in 4th, 5th round this year. So they might be able to just grab a tight end earlier and save like a 4th or 5th for a safety because it seems like there's a ton of them.
If I could invest my free agent dollars for the 49ers in any individual players or positions, there's so many mistakes that can be made in free agency. Guys secure the bag and they just say, you know what? I'm going to kick up my feet and that's it. They lose all motivation. Some guys you bring into your room and you find out they're there for them. They're really more about the money than they are about your culture and winning and having just dogs. I mean, the Niners have just guys who want to win on defense. Guys who, I don't want to say the kind of guys that play for free. That sounds a little hokey, but you know what I'm saying. Guys who show up because they love to play the game of football. Shanahan doesn't have to sit there. What's that?
Can I guess where this is going? I feel like you're going to say Jimmy Ward based on what you're saying. Is that who you're thinking?
I want Jimmy Ward. I want to spend my money.
Agreed.
I want to I'm looking at the Niners situation. I'm thinking, okay, how are they going to do this? You can't, it's a salary cap. Guys like me want everybody on the team. I'm like Eddie D. I want the old, 3 deep at every position. I'm a personnel guy. I want to see them. To me, I think you really win when you have the best players. And they've gotten really close to winning because they've had almost every year really, really deep rosters, thanks to John Lynch and Adam Peters and their scouting. They've done a really good job on the roster, and so they have a great roster. Yeah. And one of the things they do is they get these guys on defense that are true athletes and dogs. I mean, guys who really want to play, guys who really love to hit and run and are physical. They're one of the Niners. Look at the Niners. If there was the one defining stat of the year is that nobody who played the Niners won the next week. Yeah. That was the entire year, including the Eagles. So, that means that the Niners take it out of you. And that means that they're really physical. And I think that is a personnel thing. The other thing is they draft a bunch of guys for the most part who love to play. Shanahan doesn't have to sit there and motivate everybody every week to play because they got a room full of guys who are frothing at the mouth and they love to play and they would play for free. And they're the kind of guys that just love football and love ball. So you got to figure out who loves ball. In the midst of all this, you got to make investments on certain guys. And when you sign guys outside of the room and you give them more money, that's problematic for your culture because guys are like, what the hell? You're paying that guy to come in here? I'm better than him. I'm going to beat him out. And there's all this back and forth. To me, I would rather let McGlinchey go. Obviously, you're letting Jimmy go. Let Brendel go. And just handpick a couple guys. I mean, if you got to let Aziz go, I guess I would let Aziz go, even though I don't want to. But I'm prioritizing if I can. And I saw Bosa say that Mosley's coming back. So
That'd
it
be
sounds
great.
like maybe Mosley may come back at a reasonable deal. Mosley, I would obviously love back, even despite the ACL. Jimmy Ward, and then to me, I want Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who
Hmm.
just lit up Pacheco in the Super Bowl. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson plays for keeps, man. He
Yeah.
played the way I saw him play at Florida is the way he played with the Saints. The way he played with the Saints is the way he played with the Eagles. The way he plays with the Eagles is the way he will play with the Niners.
Yeah.
He's a bad A, and he's versatile. If you have injuries, and there are injuries, this guy can play corner. He can play slot. He can play free. He can play strong. He can play in the box. He can play the deep middle. The guy can play every role, and so can Jimmy. And they both live to destroy. It's like
Yeah.
they're out there to seek and destroy. And as far as I'm concerned, I think after watching Mahomes, you're not beating Mahomes unless you got a whole full room of guys who are out there and they're fast and they're explosive and they're seeking and destroying. So I'm spending my money right there. I want Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Jimmy Ward. Everybody else, I'd love one of the guys back between Ebukam and Omenihu and Jordan Willis,
Yeah.
just for continuity's sake, probably maybe two. But I don't want to. That's my big free agent expenditure. Jimmy and CJ Gardner-Johnson, and I'll give them like 10 to 12 million each.
I think that's smart because if you look at the need on offense, the right tackle, there's not a free agent out there that's an upgrade over Mike McGlinchey. Mike McGlinchey is the number one free agent right tackle out there, and you don't want Mike McGlinchey at $15 million. So there really is no reason to spend on the offensive side. 49ers got a good offense. They could draft a right tackle if they move up. They could draft a second tight end. They could draft.
Some people think they're going Caleb McGarry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I did see that earlier today. Somebody put out on Twitter that, the Niners are all over Caleb McGarry. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if it was credible. I retweeted it just for the hell of
it. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think you're right there. Obviously offensive line has to be the focus, but you can do that in the draft. You can spend your money in free agency on bringing dogs back like Jimmy Ward. And I think he's crucial.
He's crucial. Yeah. Not every guy is a tone setter.
Yeah.
But when you do get tone setters, keep them, because, those are the guys, the rest of the team will, like for the Niners this year, Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner were major tone setters, and Aziz, those three guys. Their athletic dominance, the way they would kind of bounce around on the field in the pregame, the swagger that the Niners have on defense, it came from the dominant traits of their linebacking core. And it's just really, when you have dominant players, it rises the whole level of the room. So, that would be one for me. Corey says, I'd say Purdy's inability to step up is really what got him hurt. Analysts had been saying for a couple games, if he didn't learn, he'd get hurt, and he did. Yeah, the sliding out the back door is works maybe at the collegiate level. Doesn't work as well in the NFL. The athletes are too good. You're also risking too negative of a play, right? That's the kind of play that, is going to lead to a 2nd and 28, which basically means the entire series is screwed.
And,
so,
and Trey Lance is really good at stepping up in the pocket from what I've seen. He's better at it than Brock Purdy. And it may be because Brock Purdy's a smaller guy. Maybe that has something to do with it, but that's one thing I give to Trey Lance over Brock Purdy is stepping up in the pocket.
The nice thing about both these guys is neither of these guys is afraid. They literally are keeping their eyes, posted down the field, and they're looking for their receivers. To me, my only issue with Trey is when he doesn't throw spirals and the combination of the arm strength and the non-spiral creates an effect that is very hard to catch in inclement weather. So that kind of high-speed wobble ball, he's got to somehow be able to throw that. He's got to come out with a tighter spiral.
Well, I've heard people say that, but I want to ask you a question. In college, his receivers didn't have a problem with it. He was 65.7 completion percentage in college career. So I'm not sure, how much. I feel like if you're in the NFL, you're a professional wide receiver. Catch the ball. If you can, you got to catch it. Now, I will say, guys like Deebo Samuel, not really known for his hands. If we're being honest, as great as he is, and he has his strengths, hands is not one of them. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to help you. And like you brought up earlier, give him, I think you brought it up. It was actually Joe Shasky came on my show today and we talked. He brought it up. Give Trey Lance a guy with a huge catch radius, big hands, a big body receiver. Maybe it's Tay Martin, maybe a guy like that.
Yeah.
I think that's
Tay Martin's going to be good for anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. If Trey's your guy, I think you prioritize wide receivers with speed and a huge radius who have elite ball skills.
Yeah.
So just like the guy that I would have been super all over would have been the guy that went to the Commanders this year, Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson's just, up, down, he catch it anywhere and just catches everything. I mean, if it's in the neighborhood, he's got it. You want guys with high-end ball skills and really strong hands who pluck the ball out of the air. Those guys, that's what you're looking for. With Brock, you're looking for Michael Mayer. You're looking for a tight end who can stretch the seam, who's got really sticky hands because he loves to go to the tight end. And also on this Niner team, they could go to camp with the receivers they have right now and just add like maybe one day 3 guy or something like that, or one day 3 guy, one guy after the draft. I read today they met with Mingo, the Ole Miss wide receiver. Love him. Love Mingo. I think his name's Jonathan Mingo. It's like you got to see this guy play. I mean, unbelievable talent when you look at Ryan, I should say. When you look at this guy's ability, it's just he's got crazy ability.
Wow.
To catch the ball. So I mean, it's just you've got to match up guys with the right guy. Trey, I think he's gonna throw the ball down the field. Danny Gray is a guy that really didn't get utilized after Trey went out. If Trey had been healthy all year, Danny Gray could have had 7 or 8 touchdowns.
He was drafted for
Trey Ray McLeod as well.
Yeah. Danny Gray is drafted for Trey Lance.
The chef says Trey Lance is unfairly overlooked. Amnesia is afoot. Well, I just think I don't think he's. Do you think he's overlooked?
I don't know if it's amnesia because he hasn't showed a ton of amazing stuff. I think it's just the immediate gratification that people want nowadays, the unrealistic expectations. The nearsightedness to not be able to look at a guy like Trey Lance to see what he can become versus just seeing what he did against Chicago in a monsoon. I just think people are just crazy.
Toby, appreciate it. No one had a problem with Peyton Manning's Ducks. You're right. All right, Ryan, great stuff, man. Always good to wrap with you. Tell people where they can find your channel and everybody who's in the chat, close to 300 right now. Run over and sign up for Ryan's channel. This guy puts out some phenomenal content. Always great conversations. Always stretches. Your how you look at a subject. I just think that a lot of the ways you attack things make you think. And to me, if I'm thinking more, I feel like I know more.
Well, I appreciate it, Larry. Yeah, my channel is just my name, Ryan G. Hensley. You can actually see it on this sign right here. It's just Ryan G. Hensley is my channel name. I had Butcher Boy on today on the program, so it's good to talk to him. So yeah, please come subscribe to the channel. I'm live every Tuesday and Friday right now during the off season. I put out videos all day long though that aren't live, and then when the season starts, we'll be live pretty much every day. And I appreciate you having me on, Larry.
Hey, man, I'd love to have you on again. Sorry I was a little rushed today. I got locked out of my studio. I'm a circus this afternoon with the microphone, the muting, the music, the lateness. I mean, let's call it what it is. This was a clusterfuck live stream, and it's all my fault. But anyway, either way, you know what? They can't fire me.
Right. That's the beautiful thing about it.
It's at the end of the day, they can't fire me. All right, Ryan. Good stuff, man. Thanks again.
All right, bud. Have a good day.
You too. Ryan Hensley. He's really, really good. All right. We gotta run. We gotta jump. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to all of you. Join me on Grant Cohn's channel right now.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to